Who knew the taste of champagne was so much sweeter out of a cup? The Ohio Cup, that is.
Tanner Bobby the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today.
On today's Locked On Guardians, the Ohio Cup stays where it belongs. The Guardians are officially going to have a first-round bye in the playoffs all the way to the ALDS. We'll get into that, and we'll talk about how the Guardians are going to handle the last 4 days of the season now, last 4 games, and some other roster implications, and a pitching prospect we didn't spend a lot of time on yesterday as part of our prospect draft. Had a big night on Tuesday night. We'll get into that as well.
But first, I want to take a second to introduce myself because you all love it so much. I am Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts here. I am one of the original Locked On MLB hosts. Have been here. I got to look and see how many shows we're up to. We got to be getting close to 2,000 of this darn podcast. Before that, it was a nationally featured writer at Scouting 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. Yesterday, I was 62nd favorite blogger in honor of 1992 when Kenny Lofton established an Indian record at the time with 62 base swipes. And this year, I am your 113th favorite blogger that has or ever will exist for the Cleveland Guardians.
Just keep going down and down and down. People's favoritism. Always number one in my heart, Jeff. Always number one.
Tomorrow's is crazy. I'll say that. It's a ridiculous one.
I'm Justin Latta. I have not been doing anything too crazy, but I have been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. You might have read me at places like Guardians Baseball Insider, the News Herald, the Morning Journal, thousands of other blogs as well, where I didn't even make the top list for anybody because I never had a piece of writing that won me an award like the Ohio Cup. Andrew Walters has been on this team for what, 2 weeks now, 3 weeks? And since he's been here, they've clinched the division. They clinched the playoff spot. They clinched the division. They clinched the Ohio Cup. I think Andrew Walters just thinks that all the team does is party and celebrate and win really important games. I think that's, if you ask him, that's all he knows, right? Like, he hasn't seen anything different since he's been here. It's all been big wins, champagne celebrations, trophies. Guys like, oh, this just must be a normal thing around here, right?
Yeah, this is how we operate. We make fun of Cincinnati and we drink a lot of champagne.
Yeah. Cincinnati, the Ohio Cup stays in Ohio for the, what are we on, the 12th straight year? The last time it was 2010, I think was the last time they won it.
I don't pay close enough attention to the Ohio Cup to know. I found out tonight I didn't even know what the Ohio Cup looked like.
It's a beautiful piece of metal that tastes great with champagne in it, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like the Stanley Cup. You drink, you eat cereal out of it, you drink. Yeah, it's great. Who is your pick for the the Frank Robinson Most Outstanding Player award? And
Nick
do you know
Sandlin.
who won it last year? Do you know who won it last year?
Nick Sandlin and Nick Sandlin. Those are my guesses for both.
It's a guy on the very end of the roster who won it last year. And the year before that was the guy who was not on the Cleveland Guardians, but he was at one time a Cleveland player. Stay tuned to the end of the show. I'll reveal
Ramon Laureano, star of the Atlanta Braves after they made minor hitting adjustments.
Yeah, there's something to be said at the end of the season to talk about Lane Thomas and if Ramon Laureano should have been the Lane Thomas, but we'll get into that. The Guardians did beat the Reds. They did clinch the number 2 seed in the American League at the very least. We're not even going to talk about chasing down the Yankees because it's really not realistic. Yeah. And the best thing for Cleveland to do is kind of ease up until the end of the season. And we'll get into how much they can ease up and how much of a good thing that can be. And just looking at the history of the first round buys, we'll kind of talk about that later in today's show. But the Ohio Cup stays in Cleveland. The Guardians won, going away like they should against a team like the Reds, 6-1. Tanner Bybee was good all game long. They used Gaddis and they used Clase only because those guys didn't really pitch in a while, and they're going to have an off day Thursday. So You got those guys some work. We'll talk about workload and that kind of stuff as the rest of the show goes. But some important performances in this one, Jeff. You had, a home run from Kyle Manzardo to get things started. Or Lane Thomas followed up with one later. Got a couple guys with 2 hits. It was a good night for the Guardians.
Yeah, it was. I mean, hey, they clinch more than anything else. That's the big thing. But listen, everyone asked for it, so let's give it to you very quickly. Box score bingo. I appreciate that everyone likes it. So very quickly, 10 hits, 3 walks. That should be 13. That's about 4 runs. They overperformed. The other side of it, you got the Reds, who had the 4 hits, the 2 walks, and a hit batter at 7 opportunities. So they should have about 2 runs. So they underperformed. Who reached base twice in this one? You got Manzardo, you got Jose, you got Naylor, you got Rocchio, and you got Brennan, even though he was pulled from it. I think if you're picking your stars in this one, you got to start with Tanner for his performance. I think it's very easy to pull up Manzardo as well, since he reached base twice and kind of got things started. And then I think your big debate in here comes down to, Lane Thomas, who had a home run, or Josh Naylor for your third star, who reached base 3 times. And I'm going to give it to Josh. So I don't get accused of like some kind of weird homerism with my focus on Lane Thomas. He's just been really good, which is why I've been focused.
You're going to give Josh Naylor a star over Lane Thomas, who drove in 3 runs. Wow.
Yes, but Josh Naylor reached base 3 times. Lane Thomas only reached once. If you're looking at who likely had the home run makes it close, right? The home run is one of those things where you can say it might have impacted the game as much as, a double, a single, and a walk. But I think getting on base 3 out of 4 times gives him a slight edge.
And he needs that right now. You need Josh walking, and you need Josh getting on and hitting the ball hard, which Josh did have 3 hard hit balls in this one. Manzardo had 3 as well. One was a line out to first base. Manzardo hit the ball hard all 3 times at the plate. And he also worked a walk. And he had the home run. He had a ball hit to left field that, was a home run in Houston, which is ironic since Cleveland's next 2 opponents might be Houston, ironically enough. But he had the walk, he had the line out to first, he had the home run, he had a line out to left that almost was a home run. But Naylor hit the ball hard too. Lane Thomas did have the home run. He also had a great catch in right field. I think he had a sac fly, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe
drove in one of the runs. And that was my favorite thing of the night offensively was you had runners on second and third. I think Manzardo walked in the 7th inning. And then Jose doubled, and obviously Manzardo wasn't going to score on the double because, Manzardo, for all the good things he does, one of them is not run the bases, which is fine. But then Naylor
had speed.
Yeah, Naylor came up, and Naylor had the sac fly, and then Lane Thomas had an RBI ground out that he hit the shortstop. That got in Jose to score the 6th run of the game, so you had 2 on, you had runners on second and third, and nobody out, and you didn't get a hit, but you got both those runs in, which is important. And you didn't have to do it with a hit, which is something, we're going to need to see a lot of in October. Is anytime Cleveland gets a runner in scoring position in October, they're going to have to get that run across because this is not a team. Yeah, you got home runs from Manzardo and Lane Thomas. That's great. And hey, Lane Thomas did it off a righty, so that's great. That's good to see. But those have been your 2 key cogs offensively over the last month. Has been Manzardo and Lane Thomas. So if you have those 2 guys in October feeling pretty good and confident about themselves, and then you add in Jose, hopefully being Jose. Naylor has picked things up lately. That's 4 guys in the middle of your order that are really good, feeling good about themselves lately, that are going to be key for you. I know Will Brennan has been up and down. He had 2 more hits again today. And then, you're going to get Quan back, which hopefully he's healthy and feeling good about himself too. That's, again, this lineup isn't perfect. It's not going to be a juggernaut. They're going to have to really scratch and claw to score runs in the playoffs. But I think you don't have to squint too hard to see the possibility of this lineup being enough in October, right? Like, I think you don't have to really twist your own arm to really believe it, that they could do enough in October to score and give themselves a chance to win a series or 2.
Yeah. They're a weird team. Let's be honest with that. Lane Thomas, that's his 15th home run of the year. That means if you're just not looking his time in Cleveland, where he's only hit 7, but total 15 home runs is 3rd most on the team. Lane Thomas has the 3rd most home runs hit this year. David Fry, 14. And then you've got Quan, Naylor, and John Kensey Noel all tied for 5th, essentially. So, and then that's it. No one else has double digits. That's the list. That's the complete list of guys who have hit double-digit home runs this year. And still, they've improved by almost 60 home runs compared to a year ago, which speaks to how bad it was a year ago and how nice.
Sure.
I mean, for Manzardo, that's like 5 this month. I feel like I could be wrong there. So
all 5 have been since he got recalled.
Yeah. So he, in general, I think, man, what a change Manzardo has been. Thomas has been a great addition. There is, for all of our concerns and all the points where I'm like, this is a bottom feeding offense, like there are still stats that show that. Sorry, Everyday or Dave Wendell, some of that batted ball data is still not great, but they have enough pieces that you feel better. You feel better because we know Lane Thomas can occasionally pull a game out and win it for you. Kyle Manzardo, just keep him in the 2-hole. We've harped all year
about walk and a homer. Those are 2 things this team needs. They need walks and home runs.
How many home runs is he in that 2-hole? That's of those 5. I feel like it's like 3 of them, right? Like he has thrived in that spot. Let's keep him there. And then frankly, if it's against a lefty, Fry has played better. I know like he had a really rough midseason swoon, but against lefties, he's still killer. Let him hit there versus lefties. Let's not
or Thomas.
Yeah, or Thomas. I'm fine with either one. But I definitely feel, and comment below, like, don't you feel better about this lineup right now? Not just because it's performing well, but it feels more complete right now to me than it has really at any point this year.
Yeah, you have threats. You have Quan, who, if he's healthy, he can be a guy who gets on base, and that's all you really need from him. The power he showed early in the year is great. Maybe I don't think anybody's giving him an inside fastball in the postseason. I don't think that's going to happen. So he's going to have to hit the ball the other way, and he's going to have to walk to get on base. But then, you have Manzardo behind him, who has proven he has power. You got Jose, and if Naylor is hitting well, I don't think you want to walk Jose because that's going to be dangerous unless you're, it's a lefty late in the game, a reliever. And then Lane Thomas, if you bring in a lefty reliever to face Josh Naylor, that guy might have to face Lane Thomas, and that's dangerous too. And then after that, Jimenez and Bo Naylor, those guys are all capable of doing something. The thing with postseason baseball is a lot of your runs are scored on home runs. That's not going to be this team. But, if Jose can get into one, if Josh Naylor can get into one, Manzardo, 2 or 3 home runs a game is possible from this lineup because you're looking to hit mistakes. And that's what it's going to come down to is how patient this team is. And that's been their biggest thing all year. So we'll see. We'll talk about the importance of the Guardians earning the first round bye and how that sets them up versus who they might play and the implications of that. We'll talk about playing Houston coming up this week as well and some roster decisions the Guardians have coming soon. So all that coming up on today's Locked On Guardians. Today's episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, booking.yeah. Explore those U.S. cities you've always wanted to secretly learn about. Houston, get on Booking.com right now. Check out the hotels in Houston because that might be something they're going to do. Maybe it'll be Kansas City. If the season ended today, it would be Houston and Kansas City. Cleveland has had their issues with the Royals, and maybe you're not a big fan. I don't know. I think Kansas City is interesting because their ballpark is great. Even though they want a new one, I would definitely want to make a trip to Kansas City to see that ballpark, and I would definitely do it with Booking.com. Time to taste test your rivals' competition stadium cuisine on Booking.com. You can find the stadium that's just right for you. I've used it before, again, for a really late last-minute stay in Miami coming back from Jamaica last year when I was landing very late, and it was not a great situation coming back from Jamaica. I also used it to stay outside of Cooperstown, avoid the mess, and also just get a hotel somewhere close when I really wanted to go see Jim Thome get inducted to the Hall of Fame. Booking.com came in clutch. So no matter who you're a fan of, Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah.
Let's talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. They have, I was looking right before this at the MLB Futures. One of the big debates online for me today was who's going to win the National League Rookie of the Year. And this might be one of the greatest classes we've ever seen. I mean, Paul Skeens is currently the favorite. Jackson Merrill is close. And you've got Jackson Churio plus 10,000, who's had a year that deserves it. And did we all forget the fourth candidate, Shota Umanga, who at the start of first month of the year was like a Cy Young candidate. I think any of those top 4 would win in the American League. That's what kind of a crazy year it's been. If you think that there's a dark horse in here, then you should head over to FanDuel yourself. But importantly, right now, hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Who doesn't love free money? That's FanDuel.com.
The Reds fired their manager. The Twins are free falling out of the playoff race. The Tigers are surging. A lot of fun wild card implications this week, heading into the final week of Major League Baseball. All those storylines and more over at Locked On MLB with our pal Sully. Check it all out over there. I know we'll talk Guardians as well. And maybe we'll get over there and talk some Stephen Vogt with him. He was a big Terry Francona guy. I'm sure he's been impressed with the job Stephen Vogt has done. All that on Locked On MLB with our pal Sully, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Guardians are going to have quite a break now, Jeff, between their next. They're going to play Houston, obviously, over the weekend. Obviously, have the Reds out today. But you have Houston for 3 over the weekend. Those games don't mean anything anymore for Cleveland. They're not going to mean anything for Houston, likely, except for they need to clinch their division, which looks like they are going to. Did they finish off? They won tonight, so the division in the West is over, I believe. Did they clinch the West? Yes, they did clinch the West. So
I believe
the Astros had nothing left to play for. Is that a playoff spot? What is that? Y is division. Yeah. So the AL West is
Y
clinched.
is division. Yeah, it's done.
Yeah. So the Astros have nothing left to play for because they're eliminated from the 2 seed.
The Mariners are more or less done. Like, let's be honest. It's a hard road for them to get back to.
So the Guardians are going to wrap things up on Sunday, and then they're not going to play again until Saturday. So they're going to finish on September 29th. They won't play again until October 5th. That's game 1, and that'll be versus the winner likely of Houston or Kansas City right now, because the Twins right now are 2 games out of that last wild card spot. They got a tough road ahead if they're going to make it in. All they got to do is tie with Kansas City to get that spot because they have the tiebreaker. But the Tigers have the White Sox over the weekend, so you can just expect the Tigers are going to run the table there.
We expected the Twins to run the table against the pitiful Marlins. I said they lost 4-1. And
they're just in a free fall. They're 3-7 in their last 10.
When you drop a game to the Marlins, who right now would have the first overall pick because the White Sox can't pick that high, you're done. We talked about how you had to take care of business against the White Sox. This team did that after their struggles earlier in the year. When it was on the line, they swept them, and the Twins are getting. That Marlins team sold everything that wasn't nailed down. That's embarrassing.
Yeah. I think it goes without saying, it's pretty ugly over there. I think for the Guardians, it goes without saying that this first round bye is extremely important for them. And I know there's a lot of history about complaining about, too much time off in between games. It's hard. I don't think for the Guardians, that's going to really be an issue. 5 days off definitely is very odd, outside of like the All-Star break. You don't really get it very often, but it's going to set them up great. Like Houston's going to play Detroit or Kansas City in the first round, basically at this point, depending on how the rest of this week goes for those 2 teams. I would expect it to be KC, truthfully, but Houston is probably going to have to go out there. Now that Houston is for sure going to finish in 3rd place and play in the first round, they're going to set it up so Framber Valdez is going to go in game 1 against the Tigers the Royals, because you're going to get the Royals. It really depends for them if they clinch this, when they clinch this, right? Because ideally they'd want to go Seth Lugo and Cole Reagan's 1-2, and the Astros want to go Framber Valdez and Hunter Brown 1-2. So the Astros can set that up, right? They can do that already. Framber Valdez pitched on Tuesday. He's already set up to go on Sunday, and we'll talk about Tanner Bybee in a second because he's in the same situation.
Yeah.
But the Houston's definitely going to go in the first round. They're definitely going to go Framber. They're definitely going to go Hunter Brown. And Yusei Kikuchi. Those are the guys you're gonna set up to pitch games 1, 2, and 3. And remember, those are 3 consecutive days. There's no off day in the wild card round, so they got to play 2 or 3 consecutive days, and they're all going to be at Houston, obviously. But either way, you have Valdez going on October 2nd. He's not going to be able to go again in game 1. Obviously, he's going to have to wait to go on Monday, which would be game 2, because there's that stupid off day. So likely they're going to have to go with either Kikuchi in game 1 against Cleveland if they win that first round, which we'll talk about matchups later in the week too, or they're going to have to go Verlander, who's really had a tough go of it. And they only get one off day in between those 2 days. The Friday is an off day for travel. Or they get Thursday off if they clinch in the first 2. We'll see. But for Cleveland, obviously, you've got Tanner Bibby's going to have a lot of rest before that game now. You set up your rotation however you want it to go at that point, and then the bullpen gets all this time off. And a rested bullpen for Cleveland is probably the most dangerous thing, right, for the rest of the teams. Being able to line up Tanner Bibby versus Justin Verlander would be absolutely wild and hilarious, if I'm being honest, or however that ends up going.
I mean,
I'm just going to say,
weird. I just don't know
if how
Verlander's been really bad. I think like Verlander is set up where he is right now, so because they're not going to use him in the postseason. It's been rough with him of late. I think that he wouldn't even be their game 4 starter.
Yeah, I guess they could go back to. I'm trying to look here. There's Ronald Blanco. I don't know.
I think they
have a hard time. I have a hard time not seeing them not going to Verlander. We'll see.
They pulled him out of the rotation at parts during the end stretch here. I don't think they go to him. I think
he's pitching Friday, by the way, as of right now in Cleveland,
which is set up very intentionally because they don't want him anywhere near the postseason. I think they go with Blanco over him. I don't think you actually see if it goes all 3, which is probably ideal for Cleveland.
Or do they feel like they can beat the Royals without going to Framber right away? I mean, they don't have Framber listed as their probable starter this weekend in Cleveland at all, even though he pitched tonight or pitched on Tuesday. So it feels like they're not going to throw him against Cleveland because they need to have him ready for Tuesday.
Ronald's been pitching really well in the second half. I think there's almost a 0.0. I know Verlander's a big game pitcher, but he's old. Age catches up to all of us. I don't think he's starting.
Either way, Cleveland's in a good spot. Like I said before, people are in the past, like the Braves, and I think other teams have talked about handling those days off, and I'm sure people will talk to Vote about handling those days off in between during the bye now. But I think it's absolutely necessary for Cleveland, who is definitely not going to have many advantages when it comes to starting pitching. Having a rested bullpen is the most important thing for this team, and it makes them the most dangerous team, or it's what makes them the most dangerous to go deep in the playoffs is a rested bullpen. Being able to go out there and get 6 outs from Cade Smith or 6 outs from Emmanuel Clase if you absolutely need it. That's 12 outs right there on those 2 guys if you absolutely have to, let alone,
I think, there's this whole idea of they can go 2 in the postseason, but I actually think that's a bad thought process. Why change things? You've been so effective.
I'm just saying it's a situation.
No, but you're not the only one. This has come up. I've had multiple people in our comments hey, in the postseason, you can go even. It's why? Every inning you add on, a pitcher gets less effective, especially a relief pitcher. So, I mean, I just say, let's just run it how we've run it. You have 7, 8, 9 set up. Walters has looked really good. We talked about how good Eli Morgan's been statistically. Nick Sandlin should not be on this postseason roster. Let's be honest. They have the horses, especially because one of those starters is going to turn to reliever. Last thing I want is a 2-inning relief appearance. Unless you
No, you're right. I'm just saying if you absolutely have to. I mean, I remember in 2022 they did use Sam Hentges for 3 innings against the Rays, and they used Emmanuel Clase for a 2-inning save in New York.
Was that?
So I'm saying if you have to,
Hentges in was that the postseason game where he had to do that? Not postseason, the extra inning game.
It was the extra inning game, game 2 against Houston or against Tampa Bay. Yeah. I'm just saying you have the ability to get more out of those guys. And like you said, you're shifting someone to the bullpen so you can get some length out of them too. I just think that, clinching this bye is, for people who might, like I said, for people who might say the 5 days off can be dangerous, I think it's absolutely necessary for Cleveland to give them the most leverage in the most important area of their team is the bullpen. It gives them the most time off. So
this is why you went out and you paid for Hedgie, right? This is part of the reason you wanted to add that veteran leadership. So guys don't get complacent. So that 5 days off, they're focused, they're locked in, they're doing things in and around. You've got the leadership in place to do that. And that whole idea of time off, getting rusty, it's a lot of data over the years has shown that's not true. It's more recency bias, and because whenever it goes wrong, we run to it. Whenever it works out, we don't even think about it. And then the other side of it is like there's so much you can do, so much number crunching, so many reports, so much stuff that teams will fill that time up with as much information that can help these players be successful as possible.
Yeah, you're right. Hedges is a big factor in this because the Rangers did have a first-round bye last year, and nobody else in this team has really gone through that before. So I'm sure Vogt will be talking to him about what they did last season on their way to that. We'll get into more roster decisions, what the Guardians should do this weekend against Houston. We'll talk more about the Ohio Cup, and we'll get into the Clippers winning their first game of the International League Championship Series. Got a big performance down there to talk about in the minors as well. Lots to go still on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. Guys, I know playoff tickets have been crazy trying to secure those. The first one's October 5th. Game Time is going to be one of your best friends come the postseason, let me tell you, because right now you might not know when game times are happening. We don't know when the Guardians are playing, what time they're playing their first game on October 5th. We don't know who they're playing quite yet. Obviously, we don't know where they'll be on the road. All that stuff is going to be up at the air at the last moment. And Game Time is the app you want to use in those situations because ticket prices go down closer to first pitch on Game Time. And you can go out there and find deals. And again, my favorite feature of Game Time is the all-in pricing. You turn that on, and it tells you exactly what you're going to pay when you get to checkout. There's no surprise fees when you use the all-in pricing option on Game Time. I'm still going to use it to buy those Buckeye tickets. I was thinking about going to the Iowa game on October 5th. I can't now because the Guardians are playing in the ALDS that day. So this is why I didn't buy ahead of time, because I'm going to use Game Time to make a last-minute decision on those Ohio State tickets. I want to see a game that's competitive. So that means I won't be buying Michigan tickets this year in Ohio State. Ooh. That's okay, though. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with our buddies over at Game Time. Download the app, create the account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Guardians and Reds one more time in 2024. They can just rub it in that they have the Ohio Cup. I think the Ohio Cup should just sit on the field somewhere and show it off to the Reds because they just haven't seen it in so long because they haven't won it. You can check out all the action.
Reds haven't won much in the last 20 years. Let's be honest. Not a great management
the playoffs there during the pandemic, and that's been it. Poor Jeff, our buddy Jeff Carr.
Yeah, Jeff Carr. I feel, and listen, I always kind of like the Reds growing up. Chris Sable and those goggles. Who didn't love those? Barry Larkin was so cool. But yeah, I've always felt like that current group is doing some weird choices in terms of the management. I think the coaching is actually, or the development's been pretty solid, but some of the stuff on the field. I do want to, before we dive into it, I want to give a quick shout out to Everydayer Daniel Gibson at Ducklings X4, who just got his ALDS Game 1 tickets. He's coming all the way from Richmond, Virginia to watch that one. I will not be there.
I'll be there.
You'll be there. So you can't see me, but you can catch Justin at that one. So he was like, can I would love to meet you there. So I was like, hey, well, let's give him a shout out. That's quite a trip, but that's awesome.
Yeah, tweet at me that day, Daniel. I'll be around there somewhere as well. Okay, so the Guardians do have one more against the Reds this week. Obviously, Joey Cantillo is pitching in that game. I'm very curious to see what Joey Cantillo is in this one because I still think he has to be on the playoff roster. I don't think there's even if he has like a blow up against the Reds, maybe that'll put me on the fence a little bit. But I think Joey Cantillo has a spot in this playoff roster. But that'll be especially cemented if he goes out and pitches well against the Reds the way he's been pitching. Does it matter what he does in this game though?
Has he been their second best pitcher this month? Like Boyd's been really good. Don't get me wrong.
He's been their best starter.
Best pitcher. Okay. I didn't know if I wanted to put him over Tanner. It's a tough competition. And Boyd's had a few ups and downs. I feel like it's always been about Cantillo with the command, and he is commanding his pitches, and this is what we talked about. This is why when they made that trade, I said that he was the number 2 piece. The number 1 piece had quite a day in AAA today, but he did not have the best day in AAA. I know we'll talk about that in a bit.
We will. Yeah, last 30 days, 18 innings for Joey Cantillo over 4 appearances, a 1 ERA and a 1.28 FIP. So he has been their best starter.
Those are decent.
That'll be all right. That'll play. So yeah, I'm curious to see what he does. Stephen Kwan was not activated on Tuesday, but it sounds like Wednesday might be the date there, and some of that has to do with the timing of it because options still apply in the postseason. So whenever someone gets sent down, so if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, the 15-day rule for still applies there. So whoever they send down for Kwan can still be part of the playoff roster. I think they'll probably send Angel Martinez down, but I still think I'd like to keep Angel part of the playoff roster. They don't trust him. They don't trust him at shortstop, obviously, because he hasn't played there in the majors, but he has in the past. So that makes me wonder. I would rather have. I think Angel Martinez gives you more in the postseason than Daniel Schneemann. Because really you're not taking Rocchio out in the postseason.
No,
he's playing every game. He's your best defensive shortstop that's going to be on the roster. He might as well be the only one. And then if you have to, you put Angel at short if something happens, God forbid.
Yeah,
you really going to trust Schneemann more at short in worst case scenario?
I mean, I think they do. But
yeah,
I guess neither of them are all that exciting to me, if I'm honest. Like, that's not where I'm gonna lose any sleep in terms of like the postseason decisions.
I agree, but if they don't send Miles Straw back down to activate Kwan, does that guarantee Straw is going to be on the postseason roster?
I think there's a good chance of it. Let's put it that way. I think there's a very good chance of it, like in this hybrid role. Because remember, like essentially the 25th man, which was Ty Freeman until September, it's like his role was to like sit on the bench. Like it was not a role where you were getting into many games. Like I think they might place a valuation on just the ability to be a bench guy and contribute in a variety of ways with speed, defense, and then replacements. Because defensively, center field is not been a strong point for them this year. That is certainly an area where they
hasn't hurt them though, has it?
No, but it also hasn't been that helpful. So I mean, I think there is, and Straw's well liked, and he's got a lot of friends in the clubhouse, and he's another veteran type who didn't complain about getting demoted and just was a good organizational soldier. I think there's a good chance that we see him on the postseason roster.
Yeah, I think if you're going to carry Noel, you have to carry Straw. I think those two are combined because you want to use Noel to start or you want to use him off the bench for some power, even though it's been really bad lately for him. And I think Noel needs to play every game from here on out for the last 4 days because he's got to figure it out because you're going to need him in the postseason. But if you have a 1-run lead in the 8th or 7th inning, you're going to want to put Straw in center. You're going to want to move Lane to right, or depending on Will Brennan's been in or out or not. And you're going to want to have Kwan in left. That's a no doubles outfield right there. Kwan, Straw, and Lane Thomas or Will Brennan. That's a no doubles outfield. So I think those two are kind of paired together, or maybe Noel and Brennan are paired together. I don't know. I just think that if they don't send Straw back for Kwan, then that makes me think they're really considering Straw for a postseason spot. But I'd still rather keep Angel. We can get into that more later in the week as well, which I know we will. We can get into this later in the week too. But Tanner Bybee's next start, which by the way he pitched really good on Tuesday night. He looked really in control the whole game. Didn't look like he labored a whole lot. I think he gave up like 2 or 3 hard hit balls. If I'm Cleveland, I don't think Tanner pitches on Sunday. I don't want even for an inning. I know maybe you want to throw him an inning.
I think you want to get him an inning, and you can have him.
I just don't want Houston.
It's not one inning isn't going to affect anything.
I know, and you can go and look at the video and look at the data and study all that stuff. So maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but there's no substitution for in the box reps. I feel like I don't want Houston's hitters seeing Tanner.
And it's not going to, especially if it's Sunday, their hitters aren't going to be playing, dude. That's going to be all their bench guys anyway. So then you get him the reps against the bench guys. It allows him to, I know I just said rest isn't the worst thing, but pitchers kind of need that degree. Like that's the one area where I'm like, pitchers need consistency. I think getting him an inning or two, they're going to empty their bench. because they have to set up for the
I would
postseason,
say-
and they're going to be in that first round. So I think, and if he's not going to, I wouldn't want to pull him out of the bullpen and have him do something weird just so he avoids like the 3 or 4 guys who are the regular starters who might be at the top of the lineup. If anything, he goes through, faces 9 batters, and then he's done.
Yeah. Saturday, Sunday. Cantillo's not going to be able to pitch in this weekend.
No.
Lively and Boyd, I don't know. And then I'm torn on Gavin. Like, I feel like Gavin needs to.
You're hoping that you can see Cobb.
Yeah, if Cobb goes this weekend, that'd be good. He's throwing some sim games. There's no more rehab games for him to pitch in. I don't think they're sending him to Omaha to pitch in this thing. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm torn on whether or not you want to do a bullpen game. Heck, I would almost call up Tristan McKenzie to start against the Astros just so they don't see anybody they're going to see in the postseason. Like, call up Tristan. I don't know who you'd send down, but call up Tristan and let him
Nick
pitch against
Sandlin.
Houston just so. Yeah, and let him face Nick Sandlin.
Sandlin's got options.
Pedro Avila.
I apologize. I've been very negative on Sandlin. It's just like he is the obvious choice who shouldn't be here for this final ride. It's just been too rough for him, and everyone else is playing well. Like, it's very easy when you've got like 9 guys playing well and the 10th not.
I don't envy Steven Vogt in this situation because you have to balance that whole idea of rest, but also because you're going to have those 5 days off next week, you have to get guys reps over the weekend so they don't go 10 days without playing, like pitching. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't have Emmanuel Clase pitch on Wednesday and then not pitch again until next Saturday. You just can't do that. So, like, as much as I don't want to see certain guys pitch against Houston this weekend, because I don't want that Houston to get the reps off them. You also cannot rest them either and not let them go 5 days without pitching, or 10 days without pitching. It's just not realistic. So it's a tough call for sure. Chase DeLauter was activated off the injured list on Tuesday in Columbus.
What's that effect on the postseason? How does that affect the postseason, Justin?
That's the effect. Silence. That's the effect. I have there. No. Guys, he's not going to make the postseason roster.
But he was going to make the opening day roster, and then he was going to get
the opening day roster. That's right.
And he's going to. I mean, he's an exciting player, but when
he's healthy,
he's just never healthy. And until there's a degree of health, this team, since the Allen Bybee Williams fast promotions, no one has been quick promoted.
And DeLauter would be on the roster right now if he didn't get hurt this season. I think he would.
Or the season before that.
He's played 39 games this season, and only 5 of them at triple, or 4 of them at AAA, and he was the DH out in Omaha. So it's just be glad he's back and healthy.
Yeah,
and
just keep him in bubble wrap. He has played, I believe, like 40% of the total games that he could play in the between minors and college. 40%, under 40% of the total games he could have played at those levels. That's how bad health has been.
It's really bad. Doug Nikhazy, great night. We didn't talk much about him on the prospect draft show yesterday. Go back and listen to that. I know some of you didn't because our numbers weren't great. We recapped our 2024 prospect draft, and neither of us took Doug Nikhazy, and we didn't take Cade Smith either. We didn't take Angel Hanau. Doug Nikhazy just kind of fell out of favor in terms of pitching prospects in the system, even though it was pretty devoid coming into the year.
I think he needed that. I think he needed that in some ways.
He did. But what happened is he made changes that we didn't know he was going to make. He came out this season and he changed his mechanics. That's a whole new thing for him. And he had a pretty solid season. And in this game, he had 10 strikeouts in 5 2/3 innings, 3 walks. He had 25 whiffs. I was on the fence on him being a 40-man guy going into the winter.
I think you got to add him, Webb, and Aleman pretty easily to me.
Yeah, Aleman and Webb are no doubters to me.
Yeah.
I think Nikhazy's joining that list. I think you roster Nikhazy. He finally went out and made some changes that he
was resistant. He was resistant to those changes, which is
fair
natural.
Because that guy was a great pitcher in college. So why would you want to change?
That's why I want to change, because it's in college. Where most of the guys you face aren't going to even go on to independent baseball, let alone even when you're in the SEC. Most of those, no one has a lineup with 7 guys getting drafted. So it's like sometimes it takes a little bit of a humbling, and it did. But he woke up, and now he's got a bright future. Where a year ago at this time, I just said no. Like he's almost a non-prospect. So good on him. He did the work, and he deserves that reward.
Yep, he's going to be added, and he had a good night. So 10 strikeouts and 25 swings and misses is nothing to dismiss. So good on Doug. I like Doug a lot. So excited for him. Excited to be back with you tomorrow, Jeff. We'll talk to see what happens with Joey Cantillo. We'll talk more postseason scouting. We'll talk more from the Clippers game 2 of their International League Championship. That's going to be Connor Gillespie. And on Friday, we're going to do an end of the regular season mailbag. So you can start getting questions in for Friday's show for the mailbag.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us, rating and reviewing, doing your part. Make sure you go back and listen to yesterday's show. It's an evergreen one, as we like to call it. You can listen at any time. Thank you, and go Guardians, go.
Ohio.